The shuttering of Pokemon Bank coming up here in February is of particular interest to me as somebody who's becoming more entrenched in the world of trying to save physical media, or at least hold on to the scraps of it while we still can. I know Pokemon Bank itself is not like a physical thing, but it's about what it represents for physical media and in particular Pokemon games. So in case you don't know, real quick, Pokemon itself has been around since the 90s, and very unique to this gaming franchise is that it is kind of run concurrently all the way up to the modern day. And by that I mean this graphic kind of represents the journey you can go on from taking your Pokemon from like Pokemon Ruby in Gen 3 and move them all the way up to Pokemon Home so you can play them on all the modern games. This is different than other games. If you're playing Ratchet and Clank on PS2 and you decide to try the most modern version of Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart, there's a relationship there in terms of like maybe the story itself, but there's nothing you can really carry from that PS2 game into the modern era of Ratchet and Clank. You know what I mean? Most games and most franchises are like this. There's not stuff that you move from your old save file to a new one. And to be clear with Pokemon, you don't have to move your old Pokemon to your new save files if you want to, but the option is always there, and that's just something really cool and unique about it. So bringing us back to the most recent news, with Pokemon Bank shutting down, you are losing the very last way that we have of bringing those old school Gen 1 Pokemon into the modern era. Pokemon Bank was the final tether allowing you to move your older Pokemon into the modern games. If you are playing the old school Pokemon games, maybe even Gen 3, and you want to bring those Pokemon into Legends ZA or Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you are not going to be able to do that come February. And Pokemon Bank is shutting down completely. It's not even going to have an offline thing available to you to store your Pokemon, which is weird because I always thought at the very least, Pokemon Bank would probably exist on your device as just like an offline tool for storing your Pokemon and at least transferring them between the games you have on your 3DS or whatever system you're using. Now, I'm sure the Pokemon Company didn't take this decision lightly, and I also think that this isn't very surprising. I think this was always part of the plan because this is what Nintendo does. This is what this whole company has always done. They kind of move on. They move into the future. They don't really dwell on the past, if you will. So now we get to Scramble. If you've been playing the older games, and a lot of you watching this probably have some Pokemon game in your library that is pre-Switch era. If you have been playing those games and you want to get some Pokemon moved over to Pokemon Home, you have to decide, okay, do I want to do that, or do I want to go ahead and keep them on my older hardware so that if I ever decide to replay any of the other games, I can like have access to my older Pokemon. Maybe I can take a Pokemon from my Pokemon X playthrough and move it into my Pokemon Ultra Sun playthrough. And you know, people like to do that. People like to take their Pokemon and kind of swap them between games, but you can't do that if you go ahead and move all of your Pokemon X Pokemon over to, Pokemon Home, because you're going to miss out. This is your last chance. There actually is something you could do, but I'll save that for the end of the video. I want to talk about the next phase of the plan here, because I'm sure you've seen the leaks if you're watching this video. The Pokemon Company is planning a pretty big move here. It's been leaked a number of times now that Pokemon Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire, those games should eventually hit the eShop at some point in the near future. They believe it's going to happen sometime in September or October of this year, and they weren't very specific, but there's, circumstantial evidence that supports the rumor. I think we can just say this is going to happen because they did it with Leaf Green and Fire Red. I have to imagine the sales for those games were phenomenal. This cartridge right here can be upwards of like $80 to $100, $200 depending on the condition it's in. This is an original cartridge of Pokemon Fire Red. The point is, if you want to get this, very expensive. If you want to play it on modern hardware and you don't mind not having a physical version of it, you can just give them $20. And that was the other part of the news, that actually Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green are getting home support. And they said this in the same breath basically as, hell, hey, also we're shutting down Pokemon Bank. So when I see everybody talking about that definitely Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire are going to come to the Switch 2 for sure, in the same way that Leaf Green did and Fire Red, there's another part of the story that I think people kind of forget about. I'm sure this is out there. People have to be thinking about this at least sometimes, but Nintendo filed a patent a while back for a dual screen attachment for the Switch 2. And they recently updated this patent as well. So we get like very few details here. Apparently there's going to be shoulder buttons like on this extra screen. Hard to imagine my Switch 2 having a giant screen the same size as the console attached to it on a hinge and everything. But this is something that they filed for. This is a real thing. And the Nintendo eShop for DS and 3DS games was shut down a long time ago now, meaning there's a giant part of the Nintendo library that is essentially lost to time. There are ways of getting those games, but you're not going to be able to buy a 3DS game and play it on your Switch 2 unless Nintendo decides to start selling those games to you again digitally. My prediction is that this does not stop with Fire Red and Leaf Green. This does not stop with Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. I think they're trying to resell us all of our Pokemon games. Every single physical Pokemon game you can imagine shows up on the Nintendo eShop, and I think that is the ultimate plan. If you don't care about physical media or you've never played these older Pokemon games before, this is kind of a dream come true. Maybe you've seen older footage of Pokemon X and Y, and you're like, oh my gosh, I would really love to be able to play that. If that game became available for, let's say, $40 on the eShop though, on a system you already own, now that's a lot more enticing. And I think people might say like, well, is that not game preservation? That's Nintendo bringing back their library that they previously kind of, lost to time. Should people not be excited about this? I do think there will be some excitement around it. I know certainly with Fire Red and Leaf Green, people were very excited. I even almost bought them because I liked the idea of being able to play those games again and have Pokemon Home support, but I held back. I decided to just replay this and just like leave it at that. I actually played Leaf Green and it was a lot of fun and it scratched the itch. I was very happy with my experience. I was also very proud of myself for not spending another $20 on a thing that I already own. But that's part 3 of this video, and what I want to get into next is the idea of rebuying things we already own, because certainly there are going to be newer Pokemon fans that have not had access to those games previously, and I want that for them. I want them to be able to play these games at a reasonable price. What I don't want, though, is for history to keep repeating itself. Nintendo has resold us games over and over again. I remember back in the Nintendo Wii days when they started to dabble in digital purchases for games online, and I remember buying Super Mario on my Wii U. I thought it was so cool to be able to play a Super Nintendo game, and Nintendo gave me the access to do that. I didn't have to use any emulators or anything like that, which at the time I found very intimidating. And so I bought it and I thought, this is awesome. But time passed, I sold that Nintendo Wii and I lost access to all of the digital games that I bought that were on that system. I don't think I had a Nintendo account really attached to it yet. Nintendo didn't have like as robust of an ecosystem as they do now. There's no way for me to prove to them I bought it. Their modern version of this, of course, is the Nintendo Online expansion pass that allows you to play older games through their Nintendo Online portals. There's N64, Super Nintendo. On the one hand, I do appreciate the value of Nintendo Online. It is the cheapest of all of the different online subscriptions when it comes to PlayStation and Xbox, and it offers quite a bit. But I also like owning them. There's nothing stopping Nintendo from taking those offline in the future. There's nothing saving your save data from those games if you decide to start playing through them a little bit, and then they do disappear for whatever reason. Oh, that would never happen. Well, it did happen. This is not a very old console. The eShop is gone. You cannot purchase any other games on it. You can re-download your older games for now. I hope that remains true forever, but you cannot buy anything new for this system. Nintendo has changed their architecture before from the Nintendo Wii to the eShop that we got on the 3DS and so on, and then they must have changed something because we can't buy 3DS games on the Switch. What's to stop them from changing things in the Switch 3 era or beyond? So of course, what I'm going on about right now is just the importance of ownership. I probably don't need to, grandstand about it here, but if you have these older games, there are ways to take them and make them playable on other systems. Systems like the AYN Thor, which is an Android device that can emulate all sorts of games. I'm not advocating for going out and finding these games on other places. I'm advocating for taking, again, what you already own and finding ways to get it onto other hardware. If you do that, you have access to some really, really, really cool tools. One of them being Open Home, which is the thing that I really wanted to talk about today that kind of spurred this entire video. While everybody else is scrambling when it comes to Pokemon Bank and things like that, I've been replaying the older games that I legally own on my other systems through emulators. And in this time, I've been replaying Pokemon Leaf Green, which I completed an entire living dex for. I've also been playing Pokemon X and Y again. I've been playing Pokemon Emerald, and I'm accumulating more and more Pokemon through these playthroughs. And now that I'm starting to collect an impressive amount of Pokemon, Open Home has been my solution to keeping them safe forever and ever. You can transfer Pokemon across all kinds of different generations with it. It even supports certain Pokemon ROM hacks, and having this has changed the way I even think about the franchise of Pokemon itself. I got into collecting and completing living dexes and stuff when I got into Pokemon cards, and they became completely untouchable in terms of their prices and the toxicity around them. And I thought, what am I trying to do? I'm just trying to collect some Pokemon. I just like filling out the binder and seeing all of that work pay off, right? So as I've been playing these Pokemon games, I've made it a goal to try and do more living dexes. And as I've been doing more living dexes, I've been having the conundrum of like, well, I'm getting a lot of duplicates now. I have, a lot of Pokemon, but what if I want to replay the game in the future? What do I do? Not only can I store these Pokemon in Pokemon Home, but I can also swap them between games really easily just by like opening up 2 different save files and just moving them between games. Pokemon themselves, they have so many different weird restrictions with regular Pokemon Home. For example, with Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green coming to Home, Pokemon transfers from these GBA ports will be a one-time trip, as Pokemon moved from Fire Red and Leaf Green cannot be sent back to those games. Why? Why not? Why can't they? When you go back to Open Home, when a Pokemon is moved into a save file, its data from other games is saved locally, so nothing is lost when transferring to past generations. For example, a Sceptile with the Kalos Champion ribbon can be moved from Pokemon X to Pokemon Ruby, earn the Artist ribbon, and then it'll have both the Kalos Champion and Artist ribbons when moved back into Pokemon X. This is a free thing. This is something that somebody is making for free and putting it out there for the community. That is so cool. I guess my point with this whole video is that I'm just trying to present an alternative solution. So yeah, that's my prediction. I think they're going to resell us all the old Pokemon games, and I don't think there's any saving Pokemon Bank either. I saw that there was someone trying to like spread a petition that you sign to try and save Pokemon Bank. I figured they would start charging for it again if they really didn't want to kind of break that tie from the older games to the newer games. But what this represents now, because they're not doing that, is literally the turning of the page. We are entering a new era for Pokemon where if you want to get the original 150, then you better play Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. If you want to play Gen 3, then you better buy Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, or Emerald when it drops on the eShop later this year, we assume. I think they could do a remake similar to Brilliant Diamond or Shining Pearl that removes the dual screen element. But one way or another, I do think we get access to these again for a nominal fee. Anyway, I just wanted to share this because it's not all bad news. There are tools out there for those who care to use them. And there's some hope here that those of you who want to play these older games, they're probably coming. I think all of them are coming, but tinfoil hat firmly strapped to my skull.